You felt the shift, didn't you? That spark, that clarity, the sudden download of truth during your spiritual awakening, like the universe cracked open just for you, but now it's flat. No drive, no fire, no motivation. You're not lazy, you're not broken, and no, you didn't lose it. This is exactly what happens after the high fades. You tasted the mountain peak, but no one told you how to live back in the valley. That's where most people quit, thinking they've failed. But Shi heng explains what's really happening, and it's not what you think. If you've ever wondered why your soul feels awake, but your body won't move, you need to hear this. It's not burnout. It's a misunderstood phase of the journey. Watch until the end, because what he reveals last hits harder than your first awakening. Imagine this. You wake up one day, not physically, but spiritually. Something shifts inside you. You see through the veil of life's illusions, the patterns that once held you captive. At first, it feels powerful, even liberating. But then, silence. Not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that leaves you hollow, questioning everything. Why does seeing the truth feel so empty? This isn't just some abstract concept or philosophical musing, it's happening to people every single day, people like you. And here's the kicker. What if I told you that this numbness, this void, isn't failure? What if it's actually the doorway to the most profound transformation of your life? Today, we're diving deep into the paradox of awakening, a journey that strips away who you thought you were, leaving you in a state of limbo where motivation evaporates, purpose seems lost, and yet, something greater is waiting to emerge. We'll explore how ancient wisdom meets modern psychology, guided by the teachings of Shi heng, a visionary thinker whose insights illuminate the shadowy corners of the human psyche. By the time you finish watching, you won't just understand what's happening, you'll know exactly why it's necessary and how to navigate it. So buckle up. This isn't just another self-help video. This is about unraveling the mysteries of your soul and reclaiming your power. Somewhere along your journey of awakening, maybe after a major spiritual insight or a personal breakdown, you felt something shift. You saw the illusion, the noise, the patterns, and for a moment, clarity hit you like lightning. But then came the silence. At first, it was empowering, almost intoxicating. Slowly, though, that sense of meaning began to fade. Not dramatically, not overnight, but quietly, like your soul turned down the volume on life and forgot to turn it back up. You stopped chasing dreams. You stopped caring, not recklessly, but with a quiet existential sigh. The question started whispering louder. Why do I feel so numb now that I finally see the truth? Here's the strange paradox. We expect spiritual awakening to ignite passion. For many, especially the deeply introspective types, the empaths, the seekers, it does the opposite. It empties us. I remember talking to a friend once. She was brilliant, spiritually attuned, obsessed with all the right books, Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, Krishnamurti. Then she had a massive awakening after a dark night of the soul. She got it. She saw through the illusion of identity, ego chasing, external success. Yet 2 months later, she was staring at her ceiling, barely able to get out of bed. I used to cry over not achieving enough, she said. Now I don't care whether I do anything at all. I thought awakening would light me up, not leave me like this. What my friend experienced wasn't unique. In fact, Shi heng anticipated this phenomenon decades ago. He didn't speak in trendy spiritual terms, but he understood what happens when the unconscious becomes conscious. As he put it, enlightenment doesn't come by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Sounds poetic, doesn't it? Until you realize what it truly means. Awakening isn't the end. It's the beginning of a psychological death, the death of who you thought you were. The structures that gave your life meaning, goals, careers, relationships, even your sense of time, all collapse. Here's the catch. Your ego isn't gone. It's confused. It lost its map, and without a new map, motivation disappears. So it's not that you're depressed or lazy, you're simply in limbo. You've woken up from something, but you haven't woken up into something else yet. But here's where it gets fascinating and deeply misunderstood. What you're feeling right now isn't failure. It's not depression or anxiety in the clinical sense. It's something ancient and sacred. Shi heng warned that our modern world avoids this phase at all costs. This sacred pause, this void, this in-between space. He believed it was essential for true individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self. No one tells you about this part, do they? And that's exactly what we're going to unravel next. For most of your life, your motivation came from your ego identity, the me you thought you were. You wanted to prove yourself, be seen, be successful, be loved. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just how human development works. Shi heng called this the persona, the mask we wear to function in society. But the awakening process strips the mask away. Suddenly, you're no longer trying to win the game because you see the game for what it is. And that's where things get weird. Without the mask, your old goals don't fit anymore. They were tailored to a version of you that doesn't exist. Now you're like a character in a play who stepped off stage and can't figure out what their lines are supposed to be. That's why you feel unmotivated. You didn't lose drive. You outgrew the fuel that powered it. Shi heng believed we're not here to serve the ego. We're here to integrate it, to align it with something bigger. He named this process individuation, the journey of transforming from a fragmented identity into a whole unified self. Not the small self that craves praise, but the transcendent soul-level center within you that connects to everything. This self doesn't care about status, approval, or even clarity. It's here to express truth. Once the awakening happens, your psyche starts recalibrating. It begins rejecting anything fake, forced, or ego-based: jobs, relationships, ambitions, even your carefully crafted dream board from 2021. That's why people often describe awakening as both freeing and disorienting. But Shi heng warned, if we stop here, we get stuck. Some people awaken and fall into the trap of spiritual bypassing, convincing themselves that nothing matters, that it's all just illusion. So they disconnect, float, and numb out. They confuse detachment with disengagement. But the self wants something different. It wants to live through you. It wants to bring heaven into this human body. It doesn't reject the world. It redefines your role in it. To step into that, you have to go through a weird middle phase that Shi heng described perfectly, and few people recognize while they're in it. There's a phase after awakening that almost no one talks about. It's not glamorous, and it doesn't get thousands of likes. It doesn't look like meditating in Bali or writing profound Instagram quotes. It looks like sitting in silence, unable to explain yourself while the world keeps rushing by. Shi heng would say you're not lost, you're in between. You've disidentified from the ego, but haven't yet found a new way to live from the self. This space is not a failure, it's a rite of passage. But in our hyper-productive world, stillness gets misdiagnosed as laziness, and pause gets mistaken for paralysis. So you judge yourself, and that judgment blocks the very energy your soul is trying to call back. Shi heng had a term for this psychological pause: enantiodromia, the process where things flip into their opposite. When you awaken, your inner pendulum swings from ego-driven striving to soul-level stillness. You go from "I must do everything" to "why do anything?" And this swing is sacred. It's how balance is restored. In myth and ancient teachings, this is the hermit phase, the death before rebirth. It's the moment the caterpillar turns to soup inside the cocoon. Not a butterfly yet, not a bug anymore, just goo. And yeah, goo doesn't get stuff done. It doesn't hustle. It dissolves. This is where the ego panics. It wants action, identity, direction, but the self is whispering, let go. I'm building something deeper. Here's where most modern spirituality skips the hard stuff. It teaches just follow your joy or high vibes only. While intention and energy matter, Shi heng would tell you that if you try to skip the darkness, you skip the gold. He believed shadow integration, facing the repressed, uncomfortable parts of yourself, is essential for becoming whole. It's not optional. It's the core curriculum of being a human soul. This sacred nothingness you feel is where the unconscious finally has space to rise. You're not failing, you're metabolizing. Your psyche is incredibly wise. It will stall your motivation, your drive, even your access to clarity on purpose, so you're forced to feel, witness, and reclaim what you've buried. That's the real work. And here's the beautiful twist. When you stop resisting the void, something strange starts to happen. Motivation begins to return. But it feels different this time. It's not anxious, it's not performative, it's not hustle, it's something older, quieter, a kind of soul-led movement that feels like remembering instead of chasing. Shi heng called this the emergence of the self, not as a concept, but as a living inner compass. So you've walked through the void, not the kind of emptiness that frightens, but the kind that simply is. A space where the noise fades, the distractions fall away, and all that remains is the quiet truth of who you are beneath the roles, routines, and expectations. You felt the silence, not as absence, but as presence. A stillness so complete it echoes in your bones. And within that stillness, there's been a pause, an extended sacred moment where time seems to stop and everything you thought was urgent suddenly shrinks into background noise. This journey through the void hasn't been easy. It never is. There were days when it felt like wandering without direction, when the familiar ground had disappeared and nothing new had yet taken its place. But in that very disorientation, something unexpected began to happen. You started to listen not just with your ears but with your entire being. The silence became a teacher, the stillness a mirror, and in that reflection you glimpsed something deeper than your thoughts or fears. And now something new is starting to stir inside you. It's not dramatic, not a lightning bolt splitting the sky, not fireworks bursting in your chest. No, it's quieter than that, more subtle, a gentle inner pull, like a tide beginning to shift. It doesn't shout at you, it nudges, it hums beneath your skin, waiting for your attention. This isn't about going back to what used to be. It's not about fixing the past or trying to reclaim some version of yourself that no longer fits. No, this is something else entirely. This is the beginning of building something new, a life not dictated by habit or expectation, but shaped by intention. A self not defined by others' needs, but guided from within. This is where the authentic self begins to speak, not in words, not always in logic, but in nudges, in resonance, in the things that feel meaningful even if they don't make sense on paper. It's the whisper of purpose before it becomes clear, the flicker of direction before it fully ignites. In the teachings of Shi heng, this is known as the symbolic life, the inner world where our truest truths reside, often hidden behind the veil of daily survival. It's the realm of dreams, symbols, and synchronicities, the place where we begin to see patterns, feel connections, and recognize the deeper currents beneath the surface of ordinary existence. It's not fantasy, it's reality seen through a different lens, one that honors both the seen and unseen forces shaping our path. You may not have a name for this new feeling yet. That's okay, it doesn't need one right now. What matters is that you're paying attention, that you're allowing space for it to grow, because this quiet inner pull, it's not random, it's not meaningless, it's the first breath of a new chapter, one that only you can write. So keep walking, keep listening, and trust that the stirrings within you are not illusions. They are invitations. Invitations to build a life more aligned with who you truly are, not who you've been told to be. A life lived from the inside out, rather than the outside in. The self is speaking, can you hear it? When you begin to live symbolically, something shifts in the very fabric of your daily experience. Life no longer revolves around mere survival, around getting through the day, checking off tasks, or pushing through discomfort just to reach some distant goal. Instead, life becomes infused with a sense of meaning that goes beyond the surface. It's not dramatic or flashy, it's subtle, woven into the rhythm of everyday moments. You start noticing things you didn't before, not because they've changed, but because you have. This way of living is beautifully ordinary. It doesn't require grand gestures or radical transformations. It doesn't demand that you quit your job, move to a remote island, or abandon all responsibilities. No, it unfolds right where you are, in the familiar spaces of your life. A morning cup of tea becomes a ritual. A walk outside turns into a meditation. The way light filters through a window at dusk feels like a message. You begin to see symbolism not as abstraction, but as a language, one your soul has been speaking all along, waiting for you to listen. You don't hustle anymore, you respond. Instead of forcing your way through life, trying to control every outcome and squeeze every drop of productivity from each hour, you learn to pause, to reflect, to ask, is this mine to do? Does this align with who I am becoming? There's a gentleness now, a willingness to let things unfold rather than bend them to your will. You trust that when something is truly meant for you, it will find you, not because you chased it, but because you were open to receiving it. You're no longer motivated by fear of missing out. That restless anxiety, that constant scanning of what others are doing, where they're going, what they're achieving, it begins to fade. Because now you're guided by something deeper, something quieter. You follow what feels aligned even if it makes no sense to anyone else, even if it leads you away from the well-worn path. You trust your inner compass more than the noise of the world, and in that trust you find peace. You no longer chase clarity, you recognize it when it arrives. There was a time when you sought answers everywhere, in books, in advice, in endless scrolling and overthinking. You tried to force understanding, believing that if only you could figure everything out ahead of time, you'd finally feel safe. But now, you understand that clarity isn't something you can grab. It's something that comes to you, often unexpectedly, often in silence. And when it does, you know it. Not because someone told you, but because something inside resonates, rings true, feels like home. Living symbolically means being present enough to catch those moments, to notice when the universe whispers instead of shouts. It means seeing synchronicity in the mundane, finding purpose in the small, and honoring the quiet stirrings of your heart. It's not about escaping reality, but embracing it more fully, with awareness, with reverence, with an openness to the unseen forces shaping your journey. So if you're beginning to feel this shift within yourself, welcome it. Let it settle. Let it guide you. This is not the end of something nor the beginning of something entirely new. It's a return, a reawakening, a slow, sacred unfolding of who you are when you stop pretending to be someone else. And in this space, life becomes not just bearable but meaningful, not just functional but deeply felt. Because when you live symbolically, you stop merely existing and start truly living. Living from the self doesn't mean you'll suddenly feel motivated every single day in the way society expects or glorifies. You won't be on a constant high of productivity, passion, and purpose. That's not real life, and trying to force yourself into that mold is just another form of self-betrayal. No, living authentically means something far more grounded and honest. You might still experience waves of fatigue. Days when getting out of bed feels like a challenge, when your body seems heavier than usual and your thoughts move slower than you'd like. You may still wrestle with confusion, moments where nothing makes sense and the path ahead is clouded. And yes, grief might visit you too, as part of being human, as part of healing, as part of letting go of who you thought you were supposed to be. But here's the difference. When you live from the self, those experiences don't carry the same weight of disconnection. You're no longer dragging yourself through a life that doesn't fit like borrowed clothes, 2 sizes too small. You no longer feel that nagging inner betrayal, the quiet knowing that you're betraying your truth for someone else's approval, expectations, or standards. Instead, you begin to notice subtle but powerful shifts within yourself. You find yourself drawn to create, even when no one is watching. Not for likes, not for validation, not for recognition, but simply because something inside you wants to come through. Whether it's writing, cooking, gardening, drawing, or simply organizing your space with care, creativity becomes a quiet act of alignment. It's how your soul speaks, how your energy flows when it's not blocked by external pressure or internal resistance. You start saying no to things that don't resonate, even if they look good on paper. Even if others expect you to say yes, even if turning away feels uncomfortable at first, because you've learned to trust that discomfort is not always a warning sign. Sometimes it's a boundary being honored, and honoring your boundaries, even quietly, builds a kind of strength that no applause could ever match. You follow your curiosity, not your checklist. Instead of rigidly sticking to plans made months ago, you allow yourself to explore what feels alive right now, what interests you, what stirs your imagination, what makes you lean in even slightly. Those moments are clues. They point you toward the version of yourself that isn't trying to impress anyone, but is simply being present with her own unfolding. And most importantly, you begin to choose peace over performance. Not the kind of peace that avoids all conflict or discomfort, but the kind that comes from being in alignment with your values, your needs, your truth. You stop measuring your worth by how much you can endure or how many roles you can juggle. Instead, you ask yourself daily, does this feel like me? Does this honor who I am becoming? This is the new fuel that powers your life, not adrenaline, not hustle culture, not fear of falling behind. It's alignment. A deep, quiet knowing that you are moving in the direction of your truest self, even if progress feels slow or invisible at times. Because living from the self is not about doing more. It's about being more. Being fully present in your own life. Being honest with yourself even when it hurts. Being gentle with your process even when you wish it moved faster. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's real. And once you taste that kind of authenticity, there's no going back. If you've resonated with any part of this message, if even one sentence landed differently, if a single phrase echoed something you've been feeling but haven't yet found the words for, then I want to hear from you. Because awakening is not always dramatic. Sometimes it begins as a quiet stirring in the chest. A moment when you realize you're no longer willing to ignore the questions that keep rising at 2 a.m. or the sense that something inside you has shifted, even if everything on the outside looks exactly the same. It can feel unsettling, disorienting, like you're standing between who you were and who you're becoming, unsure how to move forward, but unwilling to go back. And in those moments, it's easy to feel alone. Like no one else understands what it means to question so deeply, to feel so much, to long for more without knowing exactly what more is. You might look around and wonder, is it just me? Is it wrong to want something different, something deeper, something real? Let me tell you this, you are not alone. There are others here, many of them, who have felt the weight of awakening too, who have wrestled with doubt, who have cried silent tears over a life that once seemed enough, but now feels like a borrowed suit that doesn't quite fit. People who are choosing, day by day, to live more honestly, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means letting go of things that used to define them. So if any of this speaks to you, don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment below. Share your story, no matter how small or uncertain it may feel. Tell us what brought you here today, what you're questioning, what you're beginning to see, what you hope for, even if you're not sure how to reach it yet. This is your invitation to speak, to be seen, to find your people. Together, let's create a space, a community of seekers who understand that this journey isn't easy, but it is worth it. A place where we honor the quiet transformations as much as the big leaps, where we support each other through the confusion, the grief, the joy, and the unfolding, where we remind one another that living from the self is not a straight path, but a spiral, one where we circle back to ourselves again and again, each time with a little more clarity, a little more courage, and a little more compassion. So come as you are, speak your truth, however messy, ask your questions, however unformed, because here there's no need to pretend, no need to have it all figured out. Just show up with your heart open and know that you are welcome. We're walking similar paths, and together we're stronger. And if you want more content like this, if you're hungry for insights that go beyond surface-level advice and dive deep into the layers of psychology, soul work, and self-awareness in ways that are not only meaningful but practical for real life, then I invite you to become part of something greater. Welcome to Fractal Wisdom. This is more than just a channel or a platform. It's a space where we explore the intricate patterns of the inner world, the hidden forces that shape our choices, the quiet truths we've buried beneath years of conditioning, and the deeper intelligence that lives within us all. Here, we don't just talk about self-improvement, we talk about self-discovery. We don't just offer tips, we offer tools for transformation, tools that help you understand yourself with more compassion, clarity, and curiosity. Awakening isn't the end of the story, it's where the real story begins. Because once you start seeing yourself more clearly, once you begin to peel back the layers of who you thought you were supposed to be, there's no going back. But what comes next? That's the question so many of us face. How do we integrate these insights into daily life? How do we navigate the discomfort of change without losing ourselves? How do we build a life that feels not just successful by the world's standards, but deeply true? That's exactly what we explore here. Every video, every piece of writing, every conversation is an invitation to go further, not away from your life, but deeper into it, to find meaning in the mundane, to see beauty in the broken pieces, to recognize that healing is not linear, growth is not always comfortable, and awakening is not a one-time event, but a lifelong unfolding. So, if this speaks to you, if something inside stirs when you hear these words, then hit that subscribe button now and stay connected. Let's continue exploring the depths of the human experience together. Let's walk through the questions that have no easy answers. Let's honor the parts of ourselves that have been overlooked, dismissed, or silenced for too long. And let's create space for the kind of growth that doesn't come from fixing ourselves, but from finally allowing ourselves to be seen. Because you deserve to live a life that feels true. A life that resonates with who you really are, not who others expect you to be. You deserve to feel grounded in your own truth, even when the world around you feels chaotic. You deserve to move forward with purpose, not pressure, with alignment, not anxiety. This is your journey, and it's just beginning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up with courage, with curiosity, with heart. Let's keep going together.